Okay, I'm going to do The Residence at Whitminster by M.R. James, of course, the king of the genre, and my favorite. I guess he is my favorite. I didn't realize that, but I guess he is. So, anyways, this is from 1919, and I just love his energy so much. I just can't explain it to you. It's just like incredible. But, anyways, Dr. Ashton, Thomas Ashton, Dr. Divinity, sat in his study, habited in a dressing gown with a silk cap on his shaven head, his wig being for the time taken off and placed on its block on a side table. He was a man of some 55 years, strongly made, of a sanguine complexion, an angry eye, and a long upper lip. Face and eye were lighted up at the moment when I picture him by the level ray of an afternoon sun that shone in upon him through a tall sash window given on the west. The room into which it shone was also tall, lined with bookcases, and where the wall showed between them paneled. On the table near the doctor's elbow was a green cloth, and upon it what he would have called a silver standish, a tray with inkstands, quill pens, a calf-bound book or two, some papers, a churchwarden pipe and brass, tobacco box, a flask cased in plated straw, and a liquor glass. The year was 1730, the month December. They were somewhat past 3 in the afternoon. I have described in these lines pretty much all that a superficial observer would have noted when he looked into the room. What met Dr. Mashton's eye when he looked out of it, sitting in his leather armchair? Little more than the tops of the shrubs and fruit trees of his garden could be seen from that point, but the red brick wall of it was visible in almost all the length of its western side. In the middle of that was a gate, a double gate of rather elaborate iron scrollwork, which allowed something of a view beyond. Through it he could see that the ground sloped away almost at once to a bottom, along which a stream must run, and rose steeply from it on the other side up to a field that was park-like in character, and thickly studded with oaks, now of course leafless. They did not stand so thick together, but that glimpse of sky and horizon could be seen between their stems. The sky was now golden, and the horizon, a horizon of distant woods, it seemed it was purple. But all that Dr. Ashton could find to say, after contemplating this prospect for many minutes, was abominable. A listener would have been aware immediately upon this of the sound of footsteps coming somewhat hurriedly in the direction of the study. By the residence he could have told they were traversing a much larger room. Dr. Ashton turned round in his chair as the door opened and looked expectant. The incomer was a lady, a stout lady in the dress of that time. Though I have made some attempt at indicating the doctor's costume, I will not enterprise on that of his wife, for it was Mrs. Ashton who now entered. She had an anxious, even a sorely distracted look, and it was in a very disturbed face that she almost whispered to Dr. Ashton, putting her head close to his, "He's in a very sad way, love, worse, I'm afraid." "That is he really?" And he leaned back and looked in her face. She nodded. 2 solemn bells, high up and not far away, rang out the half hour at this moment. Mrs. Ashton started. "Oh, do you think you can give order that the Minster clock could be stopped chiming tonight? 'Tis just over his chamber, and will keep him from sleeping. And to sleep is the only chance for him, that's certain. Why, to be sure, if there were real need, it could be done, but not upon any light occasion. This Frank, now, do you assure me that his recovery stands upon it?" said Dr. Ashton. His voice was loud and rather hard. "I do verily believe," said his wife. "Then, if it must be, bid Molly run across to Simpkins and say on my authority that he is to stop the clock chimes at sunset, and yes, she is after that to say to my Lord Saul that I wish to see him presently in his room." Mrs. Ashton hurried off. Before any other visitor enters, it would be well to explain the situation. Dr. Ashton was the holder, among other preferments, of a prebend in the rich collegiate church of Whitminster, one of the foundations which, though not a cathedral, survived dissolution and reformation, and retained its constitution and endowments for 100 years after the time at which I write. The great church, the residences of the dean, and the 2 prebendaries, the choir, and its appurtenances were all intact and in working order. A dean who flourished soon after 1500 had been a great builder, and had erected a spacious quadrangle of red brick adjoining the church for the residence of the officials. Some of these persons were no longer required. Their offices had dwindled down to mere titles, borne by clergy or lawyers in the town and neighborhood, and so the houses that had been meant to accommodate 8 or 10 people were now shared among 3, the dean and the 2 prebendaries. Dr. Ashton's included what had been the common parlor and the dining hall of the whole body. It occupied a whole side of the court, and at one end had a private door into the minster. The other end, as we have seen, looked out over the country. So much for the house. As for the inmates, Dr. Ashton was a wealthy man and childless, and he had adopted, or rather undertaken, to bring up the orphan son of his wife's sister. Frank Seidel was the lad's name. He had been a good many months in the house. Then one day came a letter from an Irish peer, the Earl of Kildonan, who had known Dr. Ashton at college, putting it to the doctor whether he would consider taking into his family the Viscount Saul, the Earl's heir, and acting in some sort as his tutor. Lord Kildonan was shortly to take up a post in the Lisbon embassy, and the boy was unfit to make the voyage. Not that he was sickly, the Earl wrote, though you'll find him whimsical, or of late I've thought him so, and to confirm this, 'twas only today his old nurse came expressly to tell me he was possessed. But let that pass. I'll warrant you can find a spell to make all straight. Your arm was stout enough in old days, and I give you plenary authority to use it as you see fit. The truth is, he has here no boys of his age or quality to consort with, and it is given to moping about in our rafts and graveyards, and he brings home romances that fright my servants out of their wits. So there you are, and your lady forewarned. It was perhaps with half an eye open to the possibility of an Irish bishopric, at which another sentence in the Earl's letter seemed to hint, that Dr. Ashton accepted the charge of my Lord Viscount Saul and of the 200 guineas a year that were to come with him. So he came one night in September. When he got out of the chaise that brought him, he went first and spoke to the postboy and gave him some money, and patted the neck of the horse. Whether he made some movement that scared it or not, there was very nearly a nasty accident, for the beast started violently, and the postilion, being unready, was thrown and lost his fee, as he found afterwards, and the chaise lost some paint on the gateposts, and the wheel went over the man's foot who was taking out the baggage. When Lord Saul came up the steps into the light of the lamp in the porch to be greeted by Dr. Ashton, he was seen to be a thin youth of, say, 16 years old, with straight black hair and the pale coloring that is common to such a figure. He took the accident and commotion calmly enough, and expressed a proper anxiety for the people who had been or might have been hurt. His voice was smooth and pleasant, and without any trace, curiously, of an Irish brogue. Frank Seidel was a younger boy, perhaps of 11 or 12, but Lord Saul did not for that reject his company. Frank was able to teach him various games he had not known in Ireland, and he was apt at learning them, apt too at his books, though he'd had little or no teaching at home. It was not long before he was making a shift to puzzle out the inscriptions on the tombs in the minster, and he would often put a question to the doctor about the old books in the library that required some thought to answer. It is to be supposed that he made himself very agreeable to the servants, for within 10 days of his coming they were almost falling over each other in their efforts to oblige him. At the same time, Mrs. Ashton was rather put to it to find new maidservants, for there were several changes, and some of the families in the town from which she had been accustomed to draw seemed to have no one available. She was forced to go further afield than was usual. These generalities, I gather, from the doctor's notes in his diary and from letters. They are generalities, and we should like, in view of what has to be told, something sharper and more detailed. We get it in entries which begin late in the year, and I think were posted up altogether after the final incident, but they cover so few days in all that there is no need to doubt that the writer could remember the course of things accurately. On a Friday morning, it was that a fox, or perhaps a cat, made away with Mrs. Ashton's most prized black cockerel, a bird without a single white feather on its body. Her husband had told her often enough that it would make a suitable sacrifice to Asclepius, that had discomfited her much, and now she would hardly be consoled. The boys looked everywhere for traces of it. Lord Saul brought in a few feathers, which seemed to have been partially burnt on the garden rubbish heap. It was on the same day that Dr. Ashton, looking out of an upper window, saw the two boys playing in the corner of the garden at a game he did not understand. Frank was looking earnestly at something in the palm of his hand. Saul stood behind him and seemed to be listening. After some minutes, he very gently laid his hand on Frank's head, and almost instantly thereupon, Frank suddenly dropped whatever it was he was holding, clapped his hands to his eyes, and sank down on the grass. Saul, whose face expressed great anger, hastily picked the object up, of which it could only be seen that it was glittering, put it in his pocket, and turned away, leaving Frank huddled up on the grass. Dr. Ashton rapped on the window to attract their attention, and Saul looked up as if in alarm, and then springing to Frank, pulled him up by the arm and led him away. When they came in to dinner, Saul explained that they had been acting a part of the tragedy of Radamistus, in which the heroine reads the future fate of her father's kingdom by means of a glass ball held in her hand, and is overcome by the terrible events she has seen. During this explanation, Frank said nothing, only looked rather bewilderedly at Saul. He must, Mrs. Ashton thought, have contracted a chill from the wood of the grass, for that evening he was certainly feverish and disordered, and the disorder was of the mind as well as the body. For he seemed to have something he wished to say to Mrs. Ashton. Only a press of household affairs prevented her from paying attention to him, and when she went according to her habit to see that the light in the boys' chamber had been taken away, and to bid them good night, he seemed to be sleeping, though his face was unnaturally flushed to her thinking. Lord Saul, however, was pale and quiet, and smiling in his slumber. Next morning it had happened that Dr. Ashton was occupied in church and other business, and unable to take the boys' lessons. He therefore set them tasks to be written and brought to him. 3 times, if not oftener, Frank knocked at the study door, and each time the doctor chanced to be engaged with some visitor, and sent the boy off rather roughly, which he later regretted. 2 clergymen were at dinner this day, and both remarked, being fathers of families, that the lad seemed sickening for a fever, in which they were too near the truth, and it had been better if he had been put to bed forthwith. For a couple of hours later in the afternoon he came running into the house, crying out in a way that was really terrifying, and rushing to Mrs. Ashton, clung about her, begging her to protect him, and saying, keep them off, without intermission. And now it was evident that some sickness had taken strong hold of him. He was therefore got to bed in another chamber from that in which he commonly lay, and the physician brought to him, who pronounced the disorder to be grave and affecting the lad's brain, and prognosticated a fatal end to it if strict quiet were not observed, and those sedative remedies used which he should prescribe. We are now come by another way to the point which we had reached before. The Minster clock had been stopped from striking, and Lord Saul is on the threshold of the study. What account can you give of this poor lad's state? Was Dr. Ashton's first question. Why, sir, little more than you know already, I fancy. I must blame myself, though, for giving him a fright yesterday, when we were acting that foolish play you saw. I fear I made him take it more to heart than I meant. How so? Well, by telling him foolish tales that I picked up in Ireland of what we call the second sight. The second sight? What kind of sight might that be? Well, you know our ignorant people pretend that some are able to foresee what is to come. Sometimes in a glass or in the air. Maybe at the Kildonan we had an old woman that pretended to such a power, and I dare say I coloured the matter more highly than I should, but I never dreamed Frank would take it so near as he did. You were wrong, my lord, very wrong in meddling with such superstitious matters at all. You should have considered whose house you were in, and how little becoming such actions are to my character and person, or to your own. But pray how came it to you, acting as you say, a play should fall upon anything that could so alarm Frank? That is what I can hardly tell, sir. He passed all in a moment from rant about battles and lovers, and Cleodora and Antigones, to something I could not follow at all, and then dropped down as you saw. Yes, was that the moment when you laid your head on the top of his head? Lord Saul gave a quick look at his questioner, quick and spiteful, and for the first time seemed unready with an answer. About that time it may have been, he said. I've tried to recollect myself, but I'm not sure. There was at any rate no significance in what I did then. Ah, said Dr. Ashton. Well, my lord, I should do wrong were I not to tell you that this fright of my poor nephew may have very ill consequences to him. The doctor speaks very despondently of his state. Lord Saul pressed his hands together and looked earnestly upon Dr. Ashton. I am willing to believe you had no bad intention, as assuredly you could have had no reason to bear the poor boy malice, but I cannot wholly free you from blaming the affair. As he spoke, the hurrying steps were heard again, and Mrs. Ashton came quickly into the room carrying a candle, for the evening had by this time closed in. She was greatly agitated. Oh, come, she cried, come directly. I'm sure he is going. Going? Frank, is it possible already? With some such incoherent words, the doctor caught a book of prayers from the table, and ran out after his wife. Lord Saul stopped for a moment where he was. Molly, the maid, saw him bend over and put his hands to his face. If it were the last words she had to speak, she said afterwards, he was striving to keep back a fit of laughing. Then he went out softly, following the others. Mrs. Ashton was sadly right in her forecast. I have no inclination to imagine the last scene in detail. What Dr. Ashton records is, or may be taken to be, important to the story. They asked Frank if he would like to see his companion, Lord Saul, once again. The boy was quite collected, it appears, in these moments. No, he said, I do not want to see him. But you should tell him I am afraid he will be very cold. What do you mean, my dear? Said Mrs. Ashton. Only that, said Frank. But say to him, besides, that I am free of them now. But he should take care. And I'm sorry about your black cockerel, Aunt Ashton, but he said we must use it so, if we were to see all that could be seen. Not many minutes after he was gone. Both the Ashtons were grieved, she naturally most, but the doctor, though not an emotional man, felt the pathos of the early death, and besides there was a growing suspicion that all had not been told him by Saul, and that there was something here which was out of his beaten track. When he left the chamber of death, it was to walk across the quadrangle of the residences to the sexton's house. A passing bell, the greatest of the minster's bell, must be rung, a grave must be dug in the minster yard, and there was now no need to silence the chiming of the minster clock. As he came slowly back in the dark, he thought he must see Lord Saul again. The matter of the black cockerel, trifling as it may seem, would have to be cleared up. It might be merely a fancy of the sick boy, but if not, was there not a witch trial he had read in which some grim little rite of sacrifice had played a part? Yes, he must see Saul. I rather guess these thoughts of his then find written authority for them. There was another interview is certain. Certain also that Saul would, or as he said could, throw no light on Frank's words, though the message or some part of it appeared to affect him horribly. But there is no record of the talk in detail. It is only said that Saul sat all that evening in the study, and when he bid good night, which he did most reluctantly, asked for the doctor's prayers. The month of January was near its end when Lord Kildonan, in the embassy at Lisbon, received a letter that for once gravely disturbed the vain man and neglectful father. Saul was dead. The scene at Frank's burial had been very distressing. The day was awful in blackness and wind, the bearers staggering blindly along under the flapping black pall found it a hard job when they emerged from the porch of the minster to make their way to the grave. Mrs. Ashton was in her room. Women did not then go to their kinsfolk's funerals. But Saul was there, draped in the mourning cloak of the time, and his face was white and fixed as that of one dead, except when, as was noticed 3 or 4 times, he suddenly turned his head to the left, looked over his shoulder. It was then alive with a terrible expression of listening fear. No one saw him go away, and no one could find him that evening. All night the gale buffeted the high windows of the church, and howled over the upland and roared through the woodland. It was useless to search in the open. No voice of shouting or crying for help could possibly be heard. All that Dr. Ashton could do was to warn the people about the college and the town constables, and to sit up on the alert for any news, and this he did. News came early next morning, brought by the sexton, of whose business it was to open the church for early prayers at 7, and who sent the maid rushing upstairs with wild eyes and flying hair to summon her master. The 2 men dashed across to the south door of the minster, there to find Lord Saul clinging desperately to the great ring of the door, his head sunk between his shoulders, his stockings in rags, his shoes gone, his legs torn and bloody. This was what had to be told to Lord Kildonan, and this really ends the first part of the story. The tomb of Frank Seidel and of the Lord Viscount Saul, only child and heir to William Earl Kildonan, is one, a stone altar tomb in Whitminster churchyard. Dr. Ashton lived on for over 30 years in his prebendal house. I do not know how quietly, but without visible disturbance. His successor preferred a house he had already owned in the town, and left that of the senior prebendary vacant. Between them, these 2 men sold the 18th century out and the 19th in. For Mr. Hines, the successor of Ashton, became prebendary at 9 and 20, and died at 9 and 80, so that it was not till 1823 or 1824 that anyone succeeded to the post who intended to make the house his home. The man who did was Dr. Henry Oldies, whose name may be known to some of my readers as that of the author of a row of volumes labeled Oldies' Works, which occupy a place that must be honored, since it is so rarely touched, upon the shelves of many a substantial library. Dr. Oldies, his niece, and his servants took some months to transfer furniture and books from his Dorsetshire parsonage to the quadrangle of Whitminster, and to get everything into place. But eventually the work was done, in the house, which, though untenanted, had always been kept sound and weather tight, woke up, and like Monte Cristo's mansion at Auteuil, lived, sang, and bloomed once more. On a certain morning in June, it looked especially fair, as Dr. Oldies strolled in his garden before breakfast and gazed over the red roof at the Minster Tower with its 4 gold vanes, backed by a very blue sky and very white little clouds. "Mary," he said as he seated himself at the breakfast table and laid down something hard and shiny on the cloth, "here's a find which the boy made just now. You'll be sharper than I if you can guess what it's meant for." It was a round and perfectly smooth tablet, as much as an inch thick, of what seemed clear glass. It is rather attractive at all events, said Mary. She was a fair woman, with light hair and large eyes, rather a devotee of literature. Yes, said her uncle, I thought you'd be pleased with it. I presume it came from the house. It turned up in the rubbish heap in the corner. I'm not sure that I do like it after all, said Mary some minutes later. Why in the world not, my dear? I don't know. I'm not sure. Perhaps it's only fancy. Yes, only fancy and romance, of course. What's the book now? That name of that book, I mean, that you had your head in all day? The Talisman, Uncle? Oh, if this should turn out to be a talisman, how enchanting it would be. Yes, the talisman. Ah, well, you're welcome to it, whatever it is. I must be off about my business. Is all well in the house? Does it suit you? Any complaints you hear from the servants' hall? No, indeed, nothing could be more charming. The only soupçon of a complaint, besides the lock of the linen closet, which I told you of, is that Mrs. Marple says she cannot get rid of the sawflies out of that room you passed through at the other end of the hall. By the way, are you sure you like your bedroom? It is a long way off from anyone else, you know. Like it, to be sure I do. The further off from you, my dear, the better. There, don't think it necessary to beat me. Accept my apologies. But what are sawflies? Will they eat my coats? If not, they may have the room to themselves for what I care. We are not likely to be using it. No, of course not. Well, what she calls sawflies are these reddish things like a daddy long legs, but smaller. And there are a great many of them perching about their room, certainly. I don't like them, but I don't fancy they're mischievous. There seems to be several things you don't like this fine morning, said her uncle as he closed the door. Miss Oldies remained in her chair looking at the tablet, which she was holding in the palm of her hand. The smile that had been on her face faded slowly from it and gave place to an expression of curiosity and almost strained attention. Her reverie was broken by the entrance of Mrs. Maple and her invariable opening, "Oh, miss, can I speak to you a minute?" Apparently the I can Newman fly, opinion obscurum, and not the true sawfly is meant. A letter from Miss Oldies to a friend in Lichfield, began a day or two before, is the next source for the story. It is not devoid of traces of the influence of the leader of female thought in her day, Miss Anna Seward, known to some as the Swan of Lichfield. My sweetest Emily will be rejoiced to hear that we are at length, my beloved uncle and myself, settled in the house that now calls us master, nay, master and mistress, as in past ages it has called so many others. Here we taste a mingling of modern elegance and hoary antiquity, such as never ere now graced life for either of us. The town, small as it is, affords us some reflection, pale indeed, but veritable, of the sweets of polite intercourse. The adjacent country numbers amid the occupants of its scattered mansions, some whose polish is annually refreshed by contact with metropolitan splendor, and others whose robust and homely geniality is at times, and by way of contrast, not less cheering and acceptable. Tired of the parlors and drawing rooms of our friends, we have ready to hand a refuge from the clash of wits or the small talk of the day amid the solemn beauties of our venerable Minster, whose silvern chimes daily know us to prayer, and in the shady walks of whose tranquil graveyard we muse with softened heart, and ever and anon with moistened eye, upon the memorials of the young, the beautiful, the aged, the wise, and the good. Here there is an abrupt break both in the writing and the style. But, my dearest Emily, I can no longer write with the care which you deserve, and in which we both take pleasure. What I have to tell you is wholly foreign to what has gone before. This morning my uncle brought into breakfast an object which had been found in the garden. It was a glass or crystal tablet of this shape, a little sketch is given, which he handed to me, and which, after he left the room, remained on the table by me. I gazed at it, I know not why, for some minutes, till called away by the day's duties, and you will smile incredulously when I say I seemed to myself to begin to describe reflected in it objects and scenes which were not in the room where I was. You will not, however, be surprised that, after such an experience, I took the first opportunity to seclude myself in my room with what I now half believe to be a talisman of Michaelmite. I was not disappointed, I assure you, Emily, by that memory, which is dearest to both of us, that what I went through this afternoon transcends the limits of what I had before deemed credible. In brief, what I saw seated in my bedroom, in the broad daylight of summer, and looking into that crystal depth of that small round tablet, was this. First, a prospect strange to me, of an enclosure of rough and hillocky grass, with a grey stone ruin in the midst, and a wall of rough stones about it. In this stood an old and very ugly woman in a red cloak and ragged skirt, talking to a boy dressed in the fashion of maybe 100 years ago. She put something which glittered into his hand, and he something into hers, which I saw to be money, for a single coin fell from her trembling hand into the grass. The scene passed. I should have remarked, by the way, that on the rough walls of the enclosure I could distinguish bones and even a skull lying in a disorderly fashion. Next, I was looking upon two boys, one of the figure of a former vision, the other younger. They were in a plot of garden walled round, and this garden, in spite of the difference in arrangement and the small size of the trees, I could clearly recognize as being that upon which I now looked from my window. The boys were engaged in some curious play, it seemed. Something was smoldering on the ground. The elder placed his hands upon it and then raised them in what I took to be an attitude of prayer, and I saw and started at seeing that on them were deep stains of blood. The sky above was overcast. The same boy now turned his face towards the wall of the garden and beckoned with both his raised hands, and as he did so I was conscious that some moving objects were becoming visible over the top of the wall. Whether heads or other parts of some animal or human forms, I could not tell. Upon the instant the elder boy turned sharply, seized the arm of the younger, who was all this time had been poring over what lay on the ground, and both hurried off. I then saw blood upon the grass, a little pile of bricks, and what I thought were black feathers scattered about. That scene closed, and the next was so dark that perhaps the full meaning of it escaped me. But what I seemed to see was a form at first crouching low among trees or bushes that were being threshed by a violent wind, then running very swiftly and constantly turning a pale face to look behind them, and as if he feared a pursuer, and indeed pursuers were following hard after him. Their shapes were but dimly seen, their number 3 or 4 perhaps only guessed. I suppose that on the whole they were more like dogs than anything else, but dogs such as we have seen they assuredly were not. Could I have closed my eyes to this horror, I would have done so at once, but I was helpless. The last I saw was the victim darting beneath an arch and clutching at some object to which he clung, and those who were pursuing him overtook him, and I seemed to hear the echo of a cry of despair. It may be that I became unconscious. Certainly I had the sensation of awakening to the light of day after an interval of darkness. Such in little truth, Emily, was my vision. I can call it by no other name of this afternoon. Tell me, have I not been the unwilling witness of some episode of a tragedy connected with this very house? The letter is continued next day. The tale of yesterday was not completed when I laid down my pen. I said nothing of my experiences to my uncle. You know yourself how little his robust common sense would be prepared to allow of them, and how in his eyes the specific remedy would be a black draught or a glass of port. After a silent evening then, silent not sullen, I retired to rest. Judge of my terror when not yet in bed. I heard what I can only describe as a distant bellow, and knew it for my uncle's voice, though never in my hearing so exerted before. His sleeping room is at the further extremity of this large house, and to gain access to it one must traverse an antique hall some 80 feet long and a lofty panelled chamber and 2 unoccupied bedrooms. In the second of those, a room almost devoid of furniture, I found him. In the dark, his candle line smashed on the floor. As I ran in, bearing a light, he clasped me in arms that trembled for the first time, since I had known him, thank God, and hurried me out of the room. He would say nothing of what had alarmed him. Tomorrow was all I could get from him. A bed was hastily improvised for him in the next room to my own. I doubt if his night was more restful than mine. I could only get to sleep in the small hours when daylight was already strong, and then my dreams were of the grimmest, particularly one which stamped itself on my brain, which I must set down on the chance of dispersing the impression it has made. It was that I came up to my room with a heavy foreboding of evil oppressing me, and went with a hesitation and reluctance I could not explain to my chest of drawers. I opened the top drawer, in which was nothing but ribbons and handkerchiefs, and then the second, where was as little to alarm, and then, oh heavens, the third, and at last there was a mass of linen, neatly folded, upon which, as I looked with curiosity that I began to be tinged with horror, I perceived a movement in it, and a pink hand was thrust out of the folds and began to grope feebly in the air. I could bear it no more, and rushed from the room, clapping the door after me, and strove with all my force to lock it, but the key would not turn in the wards, and from within the room came a sort of rustling and bumping, drawing nearer and nearer to the door. Why I did not flee down the stairs I know not. I continued grasping the handle, and mercifully, as the door was plucked from my hand with an irresistible force, I awoke. You may not think this very alarming, but I assure you it was so to me. At breakfast today my uncle was very uncommunicative, and I think ashamed of the fright he had given us, but afterwards he inquired of me whether Mr. Spearman was still in town, adding he thought that was a young man who had some sense left in his head. I think you know, my dear Emily, that I am not inclined to disagree with him there. And also that I was not unlikely to be able to answer his question. To Mr. Spearman he accordingly went, and I have not seen him since. I must send this strange budget of news to you now, or it may have to wait over more than one post. The reader will not be far out if he guesses that Miss Mary and Mr. Spearman made a match of it not very long after this month of June. Mr. Spearman was a young spark who had a good property in the neighborhood of Whitminster, and not infrequently about this time spent a few days at the King's Head, ostensibly on business, but he must have had some leisure, for his diary is copious, especially for the days on which I am telling the story. It is probable to me that he wrote this episode as fully as he could at the bidding of Miss Mary. Uncle Oldies, how I hope I may have the right to call him so before long, called this morning. After throwing out a good many short remarks on indifferent topics, he said, "I wish, Spearman, you listen to an odd story and keep a close tongue about it just for a bit, till I get more light on it." "To be sure," said I, "you may count on me." "I don't know what to make of it," he said. "You know my bedroom. It is well away from everyone else's, and I pass through the great hall and 2 or 3 other rooms to get to it." "Is it at the end next to the minster, then?" I asked. "Yes, it is. Well, now, yesterday morning my Mary told me that the room next before it was infested with some sort of fly that the housekeeper couldn't get rid of. That may be the explanation, or it may not. What do you think?" "Well," said I, "you've not yet told me what has to be explained." "True enough, I don't believe I have, but by, what are those sawflies? What's the size of them?" I began to wonder if he was touched in the head. "What I call a sawfly," I said very patiently, "is a red animal like a daddy long legs, but not so big, perhaps an inch long, perhaps less. It is very hard in the body, and to me I was going to say particularly offensive, but he broke in, 'Come, an inch or less, that won't do.' I can only tell you," I said, "what I know. Would it not be better if you told me from first to last what it is that has puzzled you? Then I may be able to give you some kind of an opinion." He gazed at me meditatively. "Perhaps it would," he said. "I told Mary only today that I thought you had some vestiges of sense in your head." I bowed my acknowledgments. "The thing is, I have an odd kind of shyness about talking about it. Nothing of the sort has happened to me before. Well, about 11 o'clock last night or after, I took my candle, and set out for my room. I had a book in my other hand. I always read something for a few minutes before I drop off to sleep. A dangerous habit, I don't recommend it, but I know how to manage my light and my bed curtains. Now then, first, as I stepped out of my study into the great hall that next to it, half that's next to it, and shut the door, my candle went out. I suppose I'd clapped the door behind me too quick and made a draught, and I was annoyed, for I had no tinder box nearer than my bedroom. But I knew my way well enough and went on. The next thing was that my book was struck out of my hand in the dark. If I said twitched out of my hand, it would better express the sensation. It fell on the floor. I picked it up and went on, more annoyed than before, and a little startled, but as you know, that hall has many windows, without curtains, and in summer nights like these it is easy to see, not only where the furniture is, but whether there's anyone or anything moving. There was no one, nothing of the kind. So on it, I went through the hall and through the audit chamber next to it, which also has big windows, and then into the bedrooms which lead to my own, where the curtains were drawn, and I had to go slower because of steps here and there. It was in the second of these rooms that I nearly got my quietus. The moment I opened the door of it, I felt there was something wrong. I thought twice, I confess, whether I shouldn't turn back and find another way there to my room, rather than go through that one. Then I was ashamed of myself and thought what people call better of it, though I don't know about better in this case. If I was to describe my experience exactly, I should say this: there was a dry light, rustling sound all over the room as I went in, and then you remember it was perfectly dark. Something seemed to rush at me, and there was, I don't know how to put it, a sensation of long, thin arms or legs, or feelers all about my face and neck and body. Very little strength in them, there seemed to be, but Spearman, I don't think I was ever more horrified or disgusted in all my life. That I remember, and it does take something to put me out. I roared out as loud as I could and flung away my candle at random, and knowing I am near the window, I tore at the curtain and somehow let in enough light to be able to see something waving, which I knew was an insect's light by the shape of it. But, Lord, what a size! Why, the beast must have been as tall as I am. And now you tell me sawflies are an inch long or less. What do you make of it, Spearman?" "For goodness sake, finish your story first," I said. "I never heard anything like it." "Oh," said he, "there's no more to tell. Mary ran in with a light, and there was nothing there. I didn't tell her what was the matter. I changed my room for last night, and I expect for good." "Have you searched this odd room of yours?" I said. "What do you keep in it?" "We don't use it," he answered. "There's an old press there and some little other furniture." "And in the press?" I said. "I don't know. I never opened it, but I do know that it's locked." "Well, I should have it looked into, and if you had time, I own to having some curiosity to see the place myself." "I didn't exactly like to ask you, but that's rather what I hoped you'd say. Now, name your time, and I'll take you there." No time like the present, I said at once, for I saw he would never settle down to anything while this affair was in suspense. He got up and with great alacrity and looked at me. I am tempted to think with marked approval. Come along was all he said, however, and was pretty silent all the way to his house. My Mary, as he calls her in public, and I in private, was summoned, and we proceeded to the room. The doctor had gone so far as to tell her that he had something of a fright there last night, and of what nature he had not yet divulged, but now he pointed out and described very briefly the incidents of his progress. When we were near the important spot, he pulled up and allowed me to pass on. There's the room, he said. Go in, Spearman, and tell us what you find. Whatever I might have felt at noonday, I was sure would keep back anything sinister, and I flung the door open with an air and stepped in. It was a well-lighted room with its large window on the right, though not, I thought, a very airy one. The principal piece of furniture was the gaunt old press of dark wood. There was, too, a four-post bedstead, a mere skeleton which could hide nothing, and there was a chest of drawers. On the window-sill and the floor near it were the dead bodies of many hundred sawflies, and one torpid one which I had some satisfaction in killing. I tried the door of the press, but I could not open it. The drawers, too, were locked. Somewhere I was conscious there was a faint rustling sound, but I could not locate it. And when I made my report to those outside, I said nothing of it, but I said clearly the next thing was to see what was in those locked receptacles. Uncle Oldys turned to Mary. Mrs. Maple, he said, and Mary ran off. No one, I am sure, steps like her, and soon came back at a sober pace with an elderly lady of discreet aspect. Have you the keys of these things, Mrs. Maple? Said Uncle Oldys. His simple words let loose a torrent, not violent but copious, of speech. Had she been a shade or two higher in the social scale, Mrs. Maple might have stood on as the model for Miss Bates. Oh, doctor and miss, and you too, sir, she said, acknowledging my presence with a bend. Them keys. Who was that again that come when first we took over things in this house? A gentleman in business it was. And I gave him his luncheon in the small parlor on account of us not having everything as we should like to see in the large one. Chicken and apple pie, and a glass of Madeira. Dear, you'll say I'm running on, Miss Mary, but I only mention it to bring back my recollection. And there comes Gardner just the same as it did last week with the artichokes and the text of the sermon. Now that, Mr. Gardner, every key I got from him were labeled to itself, and each and every one was a key of some door or other in this house. And sometimes, too, and when I say door, my meaning is a door of a room. Not like such a press as this is. Yes, Miss Mary, I know full well, and I'm just making it clear to your uncle and you too, sir. But now there was a box which the same gentleman he gave over into my charge, and thinking no harm after he was gone, I took the liberty, knowing it was your uncle's property, to rattle it. And unless I'm most surprisingly deceived, in that box there was keys. But what keys, doctor, is known elsewhere, for to open the box, not that I would not do. I wondered that Uncle Oldys remained as quiet as he did under this address. Mary, I knew, was amused by it, and he probably had been taught by experience that it was useless to break in upon it. At any rate, he did not, but merely said at the end, Have you that box handy, Mrs. Maple? If so, you might bring it here. Mrs. Maple pointed her finger at him, either in accusation or in gloomy triumph. There, she said, was I to choose one, out of the very words out of your mouth, doctor, them would be the ones, as if I've took it to my own rebuke 1/2 dozen of times, it's been near 50. Late awake I have in my bed, sat down in my chair I have, and same as you, Miss Mary, gave me the day. I was 20 year in your service, and no person could desire better. Yes, Miss Mary, but it is the truth, and well we know who it was would have it different if he could. All very well. Says I to myself, but pray, when the doctor calls you to account for that box, what are you going to say? No, doctor, if you was some masters I've heard of, and I was some servants I could name, I should have an easy task before me, but things being, humanly speaking, what they were, the one course open to me is just to say to you that without Miss Mary comes to my room and helps me to my recollection, which her wits may manage, what slipped beyond mine, no such box as that, small though it be, will cross your eyes this many a day to come. Why, dear Mrs. Maple, why didn't you tell me before that you wanted me to help you to find it, said Miss Mary. No, never mind telling me why it was. Let us come at once and look for it. They hastened off together. I could hear Mrs. Maple beginning an explanation which I doubt not lasted into the furthest recesses of the housekeeper's department. Uncle Otis and I were left alone. A valuable servant, he said, nodding towards the door. Nothing goes wrong under her. The speeches are seldom over 3 minutes. How will Miss Oldys manage to make her remember about the box, I asked. Mary, oh, she'll make her sit down and ask her about her aunt's last illness, or give her the china dog on the mantelpiece, something quite off the point. Then, as Miss Maple says, one thing brings up another, and the right one will come round sooner than you could suppose. There, I believe I hear them coming back already. It was indeed so, and Mrs. Maple was hurrying on ahead of Mary with the box in her outstretched hand and a beaming face. What was it, she cried as she drew near. What was it, as I said before, ever I came out of Dorsetshire to this place? Not that I'm a Dorset woman myself, nor had need to be. Safe bind, safe find, and there it was in the place where I'd put it, 2 months back, I dare say? She handed it to Uncle Oldys, and he and I examined it with some interest, so that I ceased to pay attention to Mrs. Ann Maple for the moment, though I know that she went on to expound exactly where the box had been, and in what way Mary had helped to refresh her memory on the subject. It was an oldish box, tied with pink tape and sealed, and on the lid was pasted a label inscribed in old ink, "The Senior Prebendary's House, Whitminster." On being opened, it was found to contain 2 keys of moderate size and a paper, on which in the same hand was the label, was "Keys of the press and box of drawers standing in the disused chamber." Also this, the effects in this box, press and box, are held by me and to be held by my successors in the residence, in trust for the noble family of Kildonan, if claim be made of any survivor of it. I, having made all the inquiry possible to myself, am of the opinion that that noble house is wholly extinct, the last earl having been, as is notorious, cast away at sea, and his only child and heir deceased in my house. The papers as to which melancholy casualty were by me reposted in the same press in this year of our Lord, 1753, 21 March. I am further of opinion that unless grave discomfort arise, such persons not being of the family of Kildonan, as shall become possessed of these keys, will be well advised to leave matters as they are. Which opinion I do not express without weighty and sufficient reason, and am happy to have my judgment confirmed by the other members of this college and church who are conversant with the events referred to in this paper. Tho Ashton, SCP, Preb Senior Will Blake, SCP, Decanus, Venerable Goodman, SCP, Preb JUNR, whatever. Ah, said Uncle Obes, grave discomfort. So he thought there might be something. I suspect it was that young man, he went on, posting with the key to the line about the only child and heir. Mary, the Viscounty of Kildonan was Saul. How do you know that, Uncle? Said Mary. Oh, why not? It's all in Debrett, 2 little fat books. But I meant the tomb by the Lime Walk. He's there. What's the story, I wonder? Do you know it, Mrs. Maple? And by the way, look at your sawflies by the window there. Mrs. Maple, thus confronted with 2 subjects at once, was a little put to do justice to both. It was no doubt rash in Uncle Oldys to give her the opportunity. I could only guess that he had some slight hesitation about using the key he held in his hand. Oh, them flies, how bad they was, Doctor, and missed the 3 or 4 days, and you too, sir, you wouldn't guess, none of you. And how they come to. First we took the room in hand. The shutters was up and had been, I dare say, years and years, and not a fly to be seen. Then we got the shutter bars down with a deal of trouble. I left it for the next day and next day. For the day and the next day. I sent Susan in with the room to sweep about, and not 2 minutes hadn't passed when out she came into the hall like a blind thing, and we had regular to beat them off her. Why, her cap and her hair, you couldn't see the color of it, I do assure you, and all clustering round her eyes, too. Fortunate enough she's not a girl with fancies, else if it had been me, why only the ticking of the nasty little things would have drove me out of my wits. And now there they lay like so many dead things. Well, they was lively enough on the Monday, and now here's Thursday, is it, or no, Friday, only to come near the door, and you'd hear them pattering up against it, and once you opened it, dash at you. They would as if they'd eat you. I couldn't help thinking to myself, if you was bats, where shall we be this night? Nor you can't crash 'em, not like a usual kind of fly. Well, there's something to be thankful for, if we could but learn it. And then this tomb, she said, hastening on to her second point, to elude any chance of interruption of them 2 poor young lads. I say poor, and when I recollect myself, I was at tea with Mrs. Simpkin, the sexton's wife, before you came, Doctor, and Miss Mary. And that's a family that's been in the place, I dare say 100 years in that very house? You could put their name on any tomb or yet grave in all the yard, and give you a name and an age. And his account of that young man, Mr. Simpkins, I mean to say, well. She compressed her lips and nodded several times. Tell us, Mrs. Maple, said Mary. Go on, said Uncle Oldys. What about him? Said I. Never was such a thing seen in this place, not since Queen Mary's times, and the Pope and all, said Mrs. Maple. Why, do you know he lived in this very house, him and them that was with him, and for all I can tell, in this identical room. She shifted her feet uneasy on the floor. Who was with him? Do you mean the people of the house? Said Uncle Oldys suspiciously. Not to call people doctor, dear, no, was the answer. More what he brought with him from Ireland, I believe it was. No, the people in the house was the last to hear anything of his goings on. But in the town, not a family but knew how he stopped out at night, and them that was with him, why they were such as would strip the skin from the child in its grave. And a withered heart makes an ugly thing go, says Mr. Simpkins. But they turned on him at the last, he says, and there's the mark still to be seen on the minster door, where they run him down. And that's no more than the truth, for I got him to show it to myself, and that's what he said. And Lord he was, with the Bible name of a wicked king, whatever his godfathers could have been thinking. Saul was the name, said Uncle Oldest. To be sure, it was Saul, doctor, and thank you. And now, isn't it King Saul that we read of raising up the dead ghost that was slumbering in its tomb till he disturbed it? And isn't that a strange thing, this young lord to have such a name? And Mr. Simpkins' grandfather to see him out the window of a dark night, going about from one grave to another in the yard, with a candle, and then them that was with him falling through the grass at his heels. And one night him to come up right up to old Mr. Simpkins' window that gives on the yard, and press his face up against it to find out if there was anyone in the room that could see him, and only just time there was for old Mr. Simpkins to drop down like quiet, just under the window, and hold his breath, and not stir till he heard him stepping away again, and this rustling like in the grass after him as he went. And then when he looked out of his window in the morning, there was treadings in the grass and a dead man's bone. Oh, he was a cruel child for certain, but he had to pay in the end. And after, said Uncle Oldest with a frown. Oh, yes, doctor, night after night in old Mr. Simpkins' time and his son, that's our Mr. Simpkins' father, yes, and our own Mr. Simpkins, too, up against that same window, particular when they've had a fire of a chilly evening, with his face right on the panes and his hands fluttering out, and his mouth open and shut for a minute or more, and then gone off in the dark yard. But open the window at such times, no, that they dare not do, though they could find it in their heart to pity the poor thing that pinched up with the cold. And she faded away to a no-think as the years passed on. Well, indeed, I believe it is no more than the truth that what our Mr. Simpkins says on his own grandfather's word. A withered heart makes an ugly thin ghost. I dare say, said Uncle Oldest suddenly, and so suddenly that Mrs. Maple stopped short. Thank you. Come away, all of you. Why, Uncle, said Mary, are you not going to open the press after all? Uncle Oldest actually blushed. My dear, he said, you are at liberty to call me a coward, or applaud me as a prudent man, whichever you please. But I am neither going to open the press nor that chest of drawers myself, nor am I going to hand over the keys to you or any other person. Mrs. Maple, will you kindly see about getting a man or two to move these pieces of furniture into the garret? And when they do it, Mrs. Maple, said Mary, who seemed to me, I did not then know why, more relieved than disappointed by her uncle's decision. I have something that I want put with the rest, only quite a small packet. We left that curious room not unwillingly, I think. Uncle Oldest's orders were carried out that same day. And so concludes Mr. Spearman, Whitminster has a Bluebeard's chamber, and I am rather inclined to suspect a jack-in-the-box awaiting some future occupant of the residence of the senior prebendary. That was residence at Whitminster. I know I've read that before. I'm not sure either people have done it or someone's done this, I know, on YouTube. I'm not sure who. I don't remember who, but I feel like I've heard it narrated. Not just read it. Like, I've read everything by M.R. James 1,000 times. He's really good. Hold on. Let me get up my AI because I have to have it give me the thing. Hold on. Give me the high authority. I'll pull the cards in a second. Hang on. Don't go away. The high authority. Hold on. The high authority. Oh, God. High authority. I've only had like 4 hours sleep, so I'm like, ugh. High authority SEO. And I made I think 6 subliminals today, in addition to narrating 3 other stories besides this one. Give me the high authority SEO title and description. For residence at Whitminster for Monty M.R. James for Cumbrian Hearth. For Cumbrian Hearth. Hold on, for Cumbrian Hearth. And do you know any legends of Charleville Castle in Ireland? Because if it does, it can give me like a narration script and I can read it and do like, I might even just do it in this video. Okay, so here's, it's giving the Legends of Charleville Castle. Charleville Castle in County Offaly is widely regarded as one of Ireland's most haunted locations, and several enduring legends surround it. The ghost of Harriet. Ooh, that was my aunt's name. I love that name. The most famous spirit is Harriet, the young daughter of the Earl of Charleville, who died after falling down the grand staircase in 1861. Visitors and investigators have reported hearing her laughter, seeing a small figure in a white dress, and feeling a childlike presence near the stairs. The King Oak Curse, a 400 to 900-year-old oak tree on the grounds, is said to be tied to the Bury family's fate. According to legend, whenever one of the branches falls, a member of the family dies soon after. This superstition persisted for generations and is one of the castle's oldest stories. Druidic grounds. The land beneath the castle is believed to have been used by Druids for ritual activity, contributing to the site's reputation for intense paranormal energy. Spectral monks and sealed rooms. Some accounts describe gatherings of ghostly monks and a malevolent presence in a room that has since been closed to the public. Modern science and investigations. Ghost hunters, TV crews, and paranormal groups have captured unexplained voices, lights, and movement through the castle. Its long corridors have vaulted rooms are said to amplify the sense of being watched. If you want, I could craft a Cumbrian-coded SEL10 description for our Charleville Castle folklore video and build you a 10-second short script. Yes. So that's interesting. So, and I believe it's in the middle of the country. It's actually kind of near Munster, where my family's from. Or supposedly like North Munster from the DNA stuff. From Ancestry DNA. Because I did like, oh my god, I hope I don't look tired. I did, what do you call it? The DNA results, like, god, it was like 2017 or something like that. And it said I had relatives from North Munster, like most of my DNA was from there, I think. But it was weird. I was expecting, my mom said I was, how'd she put it? Oh my god, I need to fix this candle, like, cause look at, it's like, I look shadowed. I don't know, do I look like I have dark circles in my eyes? Or is it just the way the light is? My mom told me I was 50% German, 25% Italian, and 25% Irish, okay? So, I was expecting something like that. Because I traced the whole family, and basically the one, supposedly they were Italian from near Naples. The Italians, they're from Naples. And they came over, they were bakers, I guess. And then, whatever village they lived in was destroyed, they said, by the volcano in the 40s when Vesuvius erupted. Because I think I asked my dad, like, what was the name of the village, if I ever wanted to, like, go check it out or anything. But he said it was destroyed by the volcano, by Vesuvius. So then, and there was an eruption of Vesuvius in the 40s. And they all came over in the, like, early 1900s, I think. Like the relatives that came from Naples, maybe like 1900 to 1910, something like that. So then, the other relatives are from Dublin. And then, so that's why, like, North Munster, I guess, I don't know, maybe they lived in North Munster and moved to Dublin. I don't know if it's the eyeshadow, it looks like so dark with the way the lighting is. But anyways, what else happened? And then, I'm just trying to think. So, the results, the Italian, there was nothing really from Naples. And actually it said something about, Vatican City. So I was like, I don't know, I wonder if one of my relatives got jiggy with a priest or something. Maybe a cardinal, because to be at Vatican City, you probably have to be like much higher than just a regular priest. You'd probably be like a Vatican or something. But that was interesting. And then there was Norwegian and French. And then there was Scottish and Irish. It didn't say like specifically which. But it did say like a lot of DNA was from this North Munster, which is actually near Charleville Castle. So I found that interesting. Because I guess Charleville Castle is about an hour from Munster, supposedly. Probably, probably depends where you are in the area and stuff, but. So anyways, that was interesting. I don't know, I really like, what's his name? M.R. James. I've always liked his stuff, but. This is not that much. A 10-second narration short? I was just curious like what the stories were about it. So anyways, I don't know. I'm trying to do all these businesses to get money to buy a castle, actually. I want to, I mean, if you're talking about, like, if I had plenty of money, what I want to do, I want to buy Drumore Castle where High Spirits was filmed. But I also want, I don't know if it's available, though, but I want Sheriff Hutton. Because that's where Edward was conceived with Richard and Anne. I want Sheriff Hutton, but I don't know if the people, they run it as a business. They probably wouldn't sell it. Who knows? I'm not even sure I really want it to, like, run as a business, but I want to have plenty of money to, like, buy something, like, really nice. Like a cottage or, well, maybe more a cottage than a castle. I love castles, but the actual day-to-day maintenance of it might be more than I want to do. So anyways, but a cottage would be just nice. And, I don't know, maybe Cumbria, Wales or something. I'd have to visit both to see where. Or maybe even have one in both places. But I'm not really someone who likes to bounce all over the place. I'm kind of more of a homebody. I like to be home. I like to make my home like a cozy space. And I know you'll say, oh, like if you look at, like, so this is my stuff. So my candles are here. And this is a dresser. And then I've got, this is, it's a bit of a mess, but whatever. And then, and then this is this table. And then I guess it's just the rest of it's the bed and stuff. But, I'm kind of like more like a homebody. And I tend to like just make my home space like very comfortable and cozy. And it's not that I'm not like an agoraphobic or anything. I like being home though. And there's just something, I don't know. I wouldn't call it like soft girl era. I'm not like that, but, well, sort of. I did do those subliminals, partially too, like that, those, some, I don't know if you saw them. So they are, I am into that stuff, but it's kind of more like, so there's a niche on YouTube that prints money, basically, called Make Your SP Conform, and it's very lucrative, so I'm trying to tap into that to serve those customers, number one, and either have them book a reading, and just even if they buy the subliminals, it serves their needs, and so so that's partially why, like, if you see like all these Make Your SP Conform, it's like, it's a niche, it's on YouTube, it's very lucrative. There's like people with videos with like millions of views. So I'm trying to like get into that. And then there's the Make Your SP Spoil You. That's like the other lucrative niche. So I guess, I don't know if those are like, because there's kind of like the SP Twin Flame, but then those are kind of niches and niches, but very lucrative. And I guess I shouldn't even be saying all this on the video, but it's not about the money though. I really do want to serve the customers too. But I just really, so I've made like, I made like a couple subliminals back maybe the end of February and March, but they didn't do that good. So I was trying to do the thumbnails and the SEO, the title, the description, like the metadata. But I used Claude and Copilot, and Claude was like, why don't you just, we did update the thumbnail and title and description, but Claude said maybe make a new subliminal. So I did, but what I'm doing now too is I have my pay up store. So I make a premium version. Like, this is what a lot of subliminal people do. You make a premium version of the pay up subliminal. You sell it in PayHip, and it's like an hour long or 45 minutes at least, hour long. Some are half hour, but most of them are like longer than that even. You make them, and then you put a 3 to 4 minute preview on YouTube, and then you sell it, and then that's like a way to start getting products. So, you know, it's because I've got to have my own income, because, you know, especially like, I don't know if I'll ever like if anything ever happens, you know. I mean, there's only like one other person I would ever be with, so I'm probably, and I don't know if that'll ever happen or not, so I may just be by myself the rest of my life. And I've got to be able to support myself, and I want to have a lot of money and have a nice life. So, there you go. And anyways, so I'm like working on that. So I've got 8 YouTube channels going, and I've also got, well, yeah, I guess I got the 3 stores, but I need Shopify because that's where the e-readers are for the card decks. So I can't like get rid of them, because you'll say, well, why don't you just get rid of Shopify then? Well, first of all, I'm paying for those domain names for my 2 stores, and I need those. I'm not going to get rid of those. And then I've got PayHip. So whatever. I can manage it. It's not a problem. But PayHip is very easy to manage. But if I only have PayHip, I can't have my online decks, which I don't like that. I want to have my online decks. I definitely need them. Especially my Ghost Patrick deck. I've been doing like these physical card pulls because people want like the physical card decks. And like I miss my deck. I'm like, oh my god, I want my deck. So I also have to like pull cards from my online deck, but I'm also doing the deck because people want to see me like on camera with the hands, the face. So I'm like, fine. So anyway, so we have all that. So, but it's like trying to build like an empire to get things. Okay, the Fool is reversed. So there's like some type of blocked energy. And then okay, 2 cards came. The Hierophant and the Page of Swords. So the Hierophant upright is kind of like like sort of like high authority, almost like wanting to do things properly. The Page of Arrows, this is like the beginnings of a message, actually, I think. So, and maybe it's like they want to do it right, but they're like not sure how to go. So it's like this is not knowing how to proceed. This is wanting to get it right, wanting to do it right, wanting to get it right. The Hierophant meaning, and then the Page of Arrows is swords in this deck, so it's like wanting to do it properly, wanting to like come back right. And then you have Queen of Cups is upright, which is like nurturing and connection. And then the 2 of Wands looking out. That card keeps coming up today a lot. It's like looking out at the world. So it's like, And then there's like something about like travel too, because the normal traditional card, like this one doesn't have it. But, speaking of which, you reminded me. I want to, so there's this, okay, let me finish my point. Like, see, the mind jumps here to there to there to there. So, what do you call it? 2 of Worlds, the 2 of Wands, there's like, it's like 2 wands, meaning with like a world on top. So I guess it is like literally looking out the world like across an ocean. I have this deck, and there's this lady on YouTube that did this video where she spread out the cards on a table, and I thought that this was that deck, but it doesn't look like it. But what I'm going to try to do is I'll look at the video again and see what was the card she pulled. She pulled like 2 cards, and I can confirm or not this is the deck, because it looks like it. It's like gold like this. It's like, I don't know if you can see with the light. It's like kind of goldish, but the back was different. It's not this back. It was a different back. And so I showed it to Copilot. I said, which tarot deck do you think this is? And we narrowed it down to this one or one other one. So it's not this one, obviously. But I'm going to just look to see what card she pulled in that. And then I can look at the deck to just confirm. Because maybe they changed the card back since the, like maybe she bought that deck a few years ago. She's been doing this tarot stuff for like probably like 8 or 10 years, I think. And so maybe like she bought that deck a while ago, and then maybe this is a new deck that they put. It could be. It's that, or else it's that other deck that they said. So I'll probably get that like soon. But I don't know. What am I saying? So I still have left to do School Story, and what's the other one? 2 Doctors by Emma James. And then I want to do, there's like a bunch of legend videos of Cumbrian legends out that'll be up like in the next couple of days or week at most, but probably knowing me, like they'll be up within like probably a few hours actually. Because you know me, I sit down and do like 8 or 10 videos in a day. And actually I was going to schedule them, but then I was like, how the hell with that? So I just released them. I was like, screw it. Because I'm like, you know what? I don't know. I don't know why. Like, it just freaks me out to schedule videos. I don't know why. I'm afraid I'll die and then they'll like be released later. It's weird. Hierophant upright, 4 of Pentacles reversed. That's actually good though, because the Pentacles when it's upright can be like stubborn. It's 3 Cups upright. So that's the Ghost Patrick deck. And then what else? Oh my god, this never got. I thought I published this. Didn't I? No, I did. I thought I did. No, it's on public. I did. So anyways, I made like 6 subliminals today. So 2 for this Make Your SP Conform. 2 for the SP Spoils You. Then, no. So wait, no, that was, yeah, I did do, no, maybe I did 8. No, 6. No, because it was those 2. Then I did, what's the other thing I did? Then I did, what's the next thing? So I made also, I wanted to make like manifest $90,000 overnight premium subliminal, so I did that. with like a preview, and then I did, what's the other one I did? What's the other one I did? What do you call it? I did, what's that thing? What do you call it? It's like a entry, I don't want to call it like entry level, but it's kind of like an entry level one. So basically what it means is that it's like a cheaper subliminals, like the people might buy like first, because when they don't know me, they're not necessarily going to maybe like book a reading right away or feel like comfortable to buy one of my higher, not my subliminals, by the way, they're right within the range for what I'm offering. They're within the comparable range of what everybody else, market rate, if you want to call it, I guess. They're within the market rate, so I'm not like too expensive or anything, but people don't know me, so they're maybe going to buy like the cheaper subliminal first. So I made it, the point is I made a few like cheaper products just so that, God, I shouldn't even be probably saying all this, but whatever, it's too late, I did. I'm not going to take this out of the video. But the point is just that it gives people like a chance to try out something for like not too much money. And then if they feel comfortable, like then later on they'll probably like buy something later or something like that. So anyways, there's that. And then what's this stuff? So what else? And then Pinterest. And then I thought I saw something here. No, okay. So anyways, what else? Yeah, so I have the other videos to do for the legends and these MR James, and then I think I'm definitely going to do the Vampire by Polydor in the next few days. I did a lot of what was on my list, but I want to do Vampire by Polydor. Let me just write that down so I don't forget. So we did Residence. We've still got, I've already done School Story on Gothic Ghost Stories by Candlelight, but I want to do it on Cumbrian Hearth. So Two Doctors, School Story, Vampire Polidori. I did The Lost Ghost earlier by Mary E. Friedman Wilkins or whatever her name was. Vampire Polidori. I want to do Sleepy Hollow, obviously. And I'm not sure about Jekyll and Hyde. I do want to do it, but it seems like it's very long, but at the same time, it's kind of like, is it really popular? If something's not really popular, it's not that I'm lazy, but do you know what I mean? I don't want to spend like 4 hours narrating something that if people don't care, then it's like, it's one thing to narrate something that's like 10 minutes or 20 minutes, and then if people don't really like care about it, then it's like, whatever. Okay, fine. But if you're sitting there spending like hours on the same story and then like nobody's watching it, that's what pisses me off. That's when I start getting vexed. I'm not from this century, if you can tell. I'm definitely, I remember like my one acquaintance said something like, well, friend acquaintance, whatever she is. She's like, you're not from this century. I was like, well, of course I'm not. I said, I've been telling you that. I said, but does anybody listen to me? And she's like, no. She's like, you were like another lifetime, like whatever. I'm like, because I'm obsessed with the Tudors and all these different things, and people are like, how do you like, oh, this and that, or how this, that. And it's like, well, you know, you just, I don't know how to explain it. I don't know, I can't explain it. I don't try to explain things anymore. I just live. So anyways, okay, I need to get out this video and on the other ones because I still got like 4 or 5 more videos to do. But obviously I love chatting to everybody. And I'll see you guys in the next video.